You've heard it said that you only get one chance to make a first impression. Well, in high school, I had the opportunity to play a basketball game against an opponent rival school that just happened to be the high school of that cute redhead that I had met at church camp. Well, now she was coming into our school to watch me play basketball, and well, basketball was kind of my thing. And so I had this wonderful opportunity to show off and sweep her off her feet. I was going to play just a little bit of the junior varsity game, and they were going to save the rest of my eligibility for that night for the varsity game, for the big show. Well, she came with her high school and they sat over with the pep band, and I played my heart out during that junior varsity game for that one quarter that I was allowed to play. Well, doing that, I'd worked up quite a sweat, and the game ended and I put my warm-ups back on and went around to try to find her during the girls' game before the varsity game would begin. But in working out like I had, I'd kind of broken up the head cold that I had. And so my head, which had formerly been so congested, now that I'd exercised and broken a sweat, was, well, everything was breaking loose. And so I went to bend way over to a water fountain just as that cute redhead approached and started to say hi to me. And I came back, and there was this line of snot hanging off of my nose, just dangling there. And she saw it, my friend saw it, the gymnasium saw it, but I didn't for several seconds. And it just hung there. And oh, the thought of it now is humiliating to me. And yet, somehow, that redhead not only saw fit to overlook the disgustingness of this young gangly basketball player, but she saw fit to date me and marry me 4 years later. There's no accounting for taste. But she was able to look past the terrible impression that I had made. Well, it's a good thing that God likewise is magnanimous, generous, and willing to overlook the bad impression that we make. Let's look in our passage in Romans chapter 5. You see, at just the right time, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. Very rarely will anyone die for a righteous man, though for a good man someone might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Since we have now been justified by his blood, how much more shall we be saved from God's wrath through him? For if, when we were God's enemies, we were reconciled to him through the death of his Son, how much more, having been reconciled, shall we be saved through his life? Not only is this so, but we also rejoice in God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have now received reconciliation. It says that Christ died for us while we were still sinners. That at just the right time, while we were still powerless, God died for the ungodly. It's incredible that God didn't just overlook us not making a great impression. We made no impression. We were terrible. We were still his enemies. And yet he was willing to reconcile us, to bring us over to his side, to bridge the unbridgeable gap, to do the work, to make two enemies into not just friends, but to be truly reconciled into a loving relationship. It's interesting, in verse 7 it says, very rarely will anyone die for a righteous man, though for a good man someone might possibly dare to die. That passage has always kind of tripped me up a little bit, but I think maybe the best understanding is to look at it as the righteous man is someone innocent. An innocent person, it'd be pretty rare for someone to be willing to give their life for someone who's just not guilty. But for a good man, someone who's kind and generous, maybe someone might dare to die. But God goes so much further and dies for us scoundrels. He dies for us who are broken and incomplete and unworthy. What an incredible, gracious gift from God. This salvation through Jesus Christ. This willingness of Jesus to die for those who just don't look very good on paper. And when you meet him, it's maybe a little bit worse. And yet he died for us anyway. He loved us anyway. This is the incredible salvation that Paul is teaching us in Romans chapter 5. That Jesus died for those who did not make a good impression. God bless you.